about the Gettysburg Address, the Emancipation, and the 13th Amendment. So, after you watch those videos, you should have um, a pretty basic idea on what each one of them did. But I want to go through and smooth out maybe some questions you have. So, if we're starting with the Gettysburg Address, it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Lincoln came to um, Gettysburg, one of the battle sites, and talked about a direction for the war, how we need to remember who was here, who died, why we're fighting in this war, things like that. Um, he was supposed to be the main speaker. There was a guy before him that was speaking. He spoke for 2.5 hours. Lincoln stands up, speaks for 2.5 minutes, and just destroys everything he said. Um, this speech is often memorized. I'm not going to make you memorize it because we're not at school, but consider yourselves lucky. Um, But I encourage you to read through it, watch that video again if you need to. This is a really powerful speech, and like you said in the video, it comes with sort of a challenge at the end, having this new birth of freedom, um, something we continually have to work on even today. Um, but that's not really what I want to talk about. I want to talk about these two, the Emancipation and the 13th Amendment. So, when you hear Emancipation Proclamation, typically the first thing you're going to think of is that it freed the slaves, but it didn't actually free the slaves. So Lincoln wrote one copy of this earlier on in the war, saying that slavery again was the reason we were fighting and that he wanted to end it. But when he discussed it with his advisors, everybody just kind of decided this is not the time. It was early in the war; interests were still a little skewed. They just decided to wait. So when it came to this point, 1863, so we're like right in the middle of the war. The Battle at Gettysburg happens July of 1863. So this comes out like 6, 7 ish months before Gettysburg, and then the Gettysburg Address was in November, yeah, of 1863. So the purpose of the emancipation means to be freed. Um, Have you ever heard of people like 15, 16, 17-year-olds talk about getting emancipated? It means you were like detached from your parents. That's what that means. But emancipation just means freedom. And a proclamation is a bold statement, something that's important. So Lincoln put this out saying the slaves need to be freed. This is why we're fighting, that kind of thing. So it gave the Northern Army more of a direction. In the beginning, we talked a lot about we're fighting to keep the Union together, and Lincoln said that in his first inaugural. Um, but now he's dedicating the North more towards the abolition of slavery, ending slavery. This also kind of gave the North a moral high ground. Like how are you going to argue with somebody who's using morality and morals? Um, like if you think about it today, if I said, "Hey, who wants a slave? I'm selling them," none of you would do that because clearly we know that's wrong. And so with Lincoln coming out with this speech saying slavery is wrong, we need to get rid of it, we need to bring the country back together. America is not founded on principles of buying and selling humans. The North is taking this moral stand. And it's like, how is the South going to fight back against that? You know? So just keep that in mind. Next, we have the 13th Amendment. Um, this was the actual, yes, slaves need to be freed now. Amendments to the Constitution, we only have 27 of them since we were founded in the late 1700s and the Constitution was written. It takes a lot to get an amendment passed. A lot. You got to go through Congress and the states have to ratify it, and it takes forever. So the fact that they took it from just a proclamation from the president to an actual amendment to the Constitution was huge. It talks about in the video how one of the biggest compromises we made on the Constitution was keeping slavery. And I know we've talked about that a little bit in class early in the year, but this was the final act, right? You can see it says, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist within the United States. So that's right, ending slavery. Um, this is super important because it gave the United States the enforcement power that it needed. The Emancipation didn't have enforcement power because it wasn't like an executive order or a law, anything like that. It was just a proclamation from Lincoln. This is law, so this has enforcement power. So that is the difference between these two. Um, so I want to make sure you watch these other videos. Yeah, watch these other videos, and then you complete this Venn diagram and this quiz. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions. Have a great week.